My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the Government is considering the case and no decisions have been made. I am unable to comment on the details of businesses' commercial transactions or on national security assessments. The Government always stands ready to act where necessary to protect the UK's national security.
My Lords, the problem here is that we seem to be looking at this issue in a vacuum. The Minister has said in the past that there are no specialist technologies at Newport Wafer Fab, but that ignores the need for capacity, industrial capacity, to build technology. The Minister will say, and has said, that the factories won't move, so why should we care who owns them? I do care. But, my Lords, there is a crippling shortage of microprocessors around the world that is hampering manufacturing. To combat that, the EU and the US have strategies. We seem to be waiting and seeing. So, to put this acquisition into context, can the Minister tell us when we will have a plan? And can the Minister tell us, undertake not to sell this business, not allow it to be sold until such plan is forthcoming?
Well, I can't comment on the details of that particular transaction, which is still under consideration, but I can tell the Noble Lord that we are, DCMS are working on a semiconductor strategy, which will also be published shortly.
My Lord, this is about the United Kingdom's biggest producer of microchips and semiconductors. It is about national resilience, and it's about whether or not we wish to become a wholly owned subsidiary of the People's Republic of China, which has been accused of genocide by Elizabeth Truss, our Foreign Secretary. My Lords, what can the Minister tell us, for instance, about the value of contracts that his own department has had, that the Ministry of Defence perhaps more particularly has had with Newport Wafer Fab? What is the value of those contracts, and will they become customers of the People's Republic of China should this deal go ahead? And why aren't we giving consideration? Why won't he comment on the remarks of Kieran Martin, the former head of the National Cyber Security Centre, that there are, his words, very real concerns about the buyout and that it poses a greater threat than allowing Huawei to build the United Kingdom's 5G network, and to this week's statement of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee in another place that it potentially compromises national security?
I totally share Noble Lord's frustration about this, and totally align with his remarks about the People's Republic of China, the awful human rights abuses that are going on there, and particularly the treatment of the Uyghur people. There is no difference between us on that. Unfortunately, this is a quasi-judicial decision that will be taken by the Business Secretary under the powers granted to him under the National Security and Investment Act that many of us debated at great length in this House. It is a quasi-judicial decision, and I can't comment on the details of that and on national security assessments. I apologise to the Noble Lord, but that is the position.
Lords, the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee found no evidence to suggest a review into the acquisition of Newport Wafer Fab had taken place. Yet, Politico reports that the government's national security advisor concluded there were not enough security concerns to block it. Can the government confirm on record whether the review that was promised by the Prime Minister took place or not?
I can confirm that the review is taking place.
My Lords, what does my noble friend make of the remarks by the advisor to the Board of Trade, Tony Abbott, that the sale of Newport Wafer Fab would not go ahead were it happening in Australia? And what discussions has been had with him and also with our allies in the Five Eyes?
Well, I mean, what would happen in Australia is a matter for the Australian government. Tony Abbott is a member of the Board of Trade. We, of course, value his insight and his opinions, but this is a quasi-judicial decision that will be taken in the interests of the United Kingdom by the Business Secretary.
The National Insurance Act. I'm grateful for the Noble. The Minister will know that trade with China over the last few years has doubled.
But that doubling has been because we now import £40 billion more than we export. This trade deficit is the biggest in this country's history with any country. We are now dependent in many sectors on imports from China, whilst at the same time imports and exports with our closest trading partners has declined dramatically. Why does the Minister think that's the case?
I suspect there are a number of different reasons for that, particularly the importation of consumer goods. The globalisation and imports from China about consumer goods, of consumables, etc., are a good thing in terms of global trade, but we have to be wary of dealing with the companies from the People's Republic of China when it comes to matters of national security. We are incredibly vigilant. The NSI Act gave us new powers in this area, and we won't hesitate to act on anything that threatens the UK's national security.
The Noble Lord the Minister says the National Security and Investment Act was passed, well, shot through this House actually, to stop things like this happening because of what had in the past. There is absolutely no doubt, and it's known across all of our intelligence communities, Five Eyes and everywhere, that this factory has strategic significance. This is actually strategically important to our nation. And therefore, whilst I understand that you're saying this is semi-judicial, it would be nice to have some commitment from the government that they understand how important this is in strategic terms and will not let this go through in some sort of error.
Well, nothing will go through in terms of an error. I can assure the Noble Lord of that. The transaction is being considered very closely. There was a report by the National Security... review is ongoing by the National Security Advisor, as I said, in response to Baroness Blake. But the decision has to be taken as outlined under the terms of the Act by the Business Secretary. It is his and his decision alone in quasi-judicial terms.
I realise that the structures and processes of government can be something of a mystery, but I'm at a bit of a loss to understand, and perhaps the Noble Lord the Minister can help me here, how something so crucial to the security and defence of this country and our national infrastructure can be an issue for the Business Secretary.
I can certainly help the Noble Lord on that, because that is what Parliament decided under the NSI Act, that these decisions are a matter for the Business Secretary to take under the terms of that Act, under the powers granted to him by Parliament under that Act. And he will take those decisions. Obviously, there is lots of advice which is coming his way from all different parts of government and from the National Security Advisor, but the decision is his alone to take.
I thought there had been an investigation into this whole matter announced in the other place. What happened to that investigation? Is it underway?
I'm not sure I can help my noble friend. I don't know what investigation he is referring to. If she is referring to the question that Baroness Blake asked earlier in the review by the National Security Advisor, which the Prime Minister announced, as I said in response to Baroness Blake, that review is ongoing.
Tory government learned nothing from their flirtation with Russian oligarchs. Why do they continue to put the interests of their friends for the obtaining of a quick buck ahead of national security?
I'm sorry, but that comment is unwarranted. This is a commercial transaction by a company called Nexperia and Newport Wafer Fab. There are a lot of jobs of people employed in Newport Wafer Fab. This is an important issue. The government will consider it properly with appropriate due diligence based on the advice from a number of other government departments and from the National Security Advisor, and the Business Secretary will take a decision in due course.
Isn't it the case that the Prime Minister announced on the 7th of July of last year an investigation and a review into this matter? What's happened to that review?
The Prime Minister announced that the National Security Advisor would be asked to look at the transaction, and he is indeed doing that.
My Lord, some of us find it difficult to understand why Chinese involvement is even being considered.
This is a commercial transaction. Nexperia, as a company, already have existing semiconductor facilities in the United Kingdom. They entered into an additional commercial transaction, and therefore that is being considered under the terms of the National Security and Investment Act.
The Minister thinks it would be a good idea for him to advise Parliament to be more careful about entrusting these wide powers to government ministers. The noble lord entertains us royally with his views on delegated powers. I think every bill that I've brought before this House on behalf of the government, we've had a long discussion about the use of delegated powers, and I'm sure we will have so again. I mean, at the end of the day, these are difficult issues. Someone has to take a decision, and the proper person, in my view, to take such a decision is the business secretary, and that was the power that was granted to him under the Act. He will do so in due course, and I'm sure when he has done so, we will have further debates on this matter.
Private notice question.